All right. Good morning, everybody. Or not morning, afternoon. Duh. Sorry about that. So we'll get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be below the video. If you're on a smaller screen, like a mobile device, if you're on a larger screen, it should be to the right of the video. All right. So let's scroll down here, see what we got. So we got a question here from Tom S. says, Q, what's your opinion of using an oversized grip on the putter? Thanks. It's purely personal preference for the most part. So basically, the theory behind using an oversized grip in the putter is that it can keep your hands more quiet. And I do think that it does help with that, because the bigger grip you have around something, the less your wrists are going to move. But it's not, it's not idiot proof. You can still, if you have a large grip on a putter, you can still use your wrist plenty. So it's not like it's going to completely take your wrists out of it, but it can definitely help keep the grips, or keep it more quiet. The thing I don't like about really oversized grips is it can take a lot of the feel, out of it. So it's really personal preference. On my putter, actually. So here's like a very, very old school. This is an old. This isn't my gamer, but this is like an old school Acushnet bullseye putter. I got this at like a garage sale for like $5. Had to pick it up. There's not a lot of these. Don't see a lot of these out there. But this has like the original like leather grip on it. It's pretty thin, but you get a lot of feedback. If you don't hit a putt solid, you really feel it, because you're going to feel a lot of vibration in this, and you also feel, because a lot of times these thin and narrower grips are lighter, so it makes the head feel heavier, which also gives you a little bit more feel, right? So yeah, it definitely has. That's why you don't see a lot. You see a lot of tour players still using grips like this, because like Tiger Woods, for example, uses the old school ping, like really thin kind of grips, and a putter grip, and it really offers a lot of feedback, and it's very light, and it helps you it feels like the putter head is very heavy, which gives you a little bit more feel with it. So there's the positive end of it. Now this here is my old putter. This is a old ping putter. It's not that old, but it's an older ping putter. But this would be kind of what I like. To me, this is my personal preference. This is kind of the best of both worlds. It is a larger grip putter, so it does offer a little bit of that hands quieting, and I also feel like it fits my hands a lot better. I feel like I don't have any. I feel like I just wrap my fingers. I have complete coverage onto this grip. Whereas a very narrow grip like that, I feel like there's gaps in my hands, and I just don't get that much. Now you're going to get more feedback from the putter because there's a thinner grip, it's a lighter grip. And things like that. But to me, this is kind of the perfect mesh. I still get a good amount of feel from this, even though it's, and this is very similar to, I use a TaylorMade Spider now is in my bag. It has pretty much, I believe it's pretty much the same grip in it. It's not a ping one. It's the Super Stroke one that's basically the same as this one. But, I like the feel of that. So to me, that's what I like. But again, that's my personal preference. So the big oversized one, I have tried that. I just feel like I don't have any feel for that putter head. I don't get the feedback. Like, so for example, if you hit one a little off the toe or a little off the heel or thin, low on the face, right? If you have a grip that is smaller, you're going to be able to feel that vibration, and you're going to get more feedback from that. Whereas you can still maybe feel it with a bigger one, but it's very dulled, right? So you can go out there and hit a lot of putts, and you feel like, man, I feel like I'm making a good stroke here, but you're mishitting it every time, right? And you can't make that adjustment. So again, it's purely personal preference. But the idea that an oversized grip is going to completely take the wrist out of it, I think it does help a little bit, and that could be a little bit of placebo. I haven't seen, that's totally anecdotal on my part, but it's really personal preference. And what you get, a lot of putting is very, very personal preference. That's why you see so many different styles, right? Things are a lot slower, so you can control more of what's going on, which means you can have a much wider variance between, what your preferences are. All right, so let's keep going. And if you're just joining, if you got your question, go ahead and again post it below the video, or to the side of the video, to the right of the video if you're on a larger screen. All right, so Michael H says, can you help me out with alligator arms at impact? I thought it corrected the problem, but it's back. When I take photos or videos, it seems to me like my arms are not fully extended at impact, and I seem to have a slight to medium bend in them all the way through the release. Is this because I'm too close to the ball? What is the fix for this? Also, seems I'm back to having a problem with early extension and standing up at impact. Are these issues related? Yes, they are. They are related. So when you're talking about alligator arms, you're talking about the arms shortening up, right, when you get to the ball, right? So that is from basically your body stalling and your arms having to race in front of your body. So if I early extend, meaning my hips are going to go this way in the start of the downswing, right? Starting my downswing and my hips go that way. Well, now from here, once my hips have tucked under, I can't really rotate anymore, right? Now I can rotate after the club passes in front and the momentum of the club brings me around, right? But I can't have my hips kind of leading the way to release the club once I tuck under right away. So what I would look at is what is causing you to early extend, and then work on the root cause from there. So what could cause you to early extend? There's three things that I see people early extend. One, it's not as common as the other two, but one is the stance at address. So if you're very much bent over the ball and your hips are sticking out very much past your ankles, you will tend to kind of stand up in the backswing, and that will continue typically in the downswing. So I would look at your setup position, and I would try to have your hips a little bit more centered over your ankles, so that way you can be in a more athletic position to be able to turn and rotate correctly. Clay discusses this in the Stop Early Extension course, which is it's a course full of videos with drills that help with your early extension. So if you want to check that out, you can click the house icon, which will take you to the homepage, and you'll see a list of all the courses on the homepage. The other two that are most prominent are coming down steep, which means that in the downswing, this club, if you're looking from down the line, is very vertical in the beginning of my downswing, right? So basically at lead arm parallel in the downswing, I see that this butt end of the club is pointing more inside of the golf ball on this side of the golf ball. And if that is the case, well, now I'm going to tend to make some sort of compensation to be able to get the club to shallow out, right? Because if I did this and I stayed in my posture, I didn't early extend and I rotated through impact, well, look what happens to the club. It's going to come way over the top, and you're not going to be able to hit a functional golf shot from there. So what a lot of people will do from this position is they will thrust the hips this way, right? In the start of the downswing, they'll go like this. Well, now look, my body's gotten more upright, but look, the club has gotten more shallow, right? Because I've changed my body orientation. And now you're going to do your kind of alligator arm thing as you're coming through, right? So that may be part of what's going on. It can be a combination of these things as well. But if you're coming down steep, a lot of times you'll be reacting to that. Now, I would much rather have someone that comes down steep and then early extends, gets the club on plane, because that can at least allow you to hit a functional golf shot. If you're someone that is coming down steep and you stay in your posture, right? Well, you're not going to hit a functional golf shot. You might get lucky and hit every now and then a functional golf shot, but usually it's not going to be very functional. It's usually going to be a pull hook, slice, something like that. So I recommend, if you are someone who's coming down steep, to early extend, so that way you can at least hit a functional golf shot. Now, you your swing gets more dependent on timing when you do that, but at least you'll be able to hit something functional, right? So ideally, you would shallow out the club early in the swing, so that way, so shallowing out the club would be this, so that way you can stay in your posture and not have to stand up. So that would be ideal. So that would be in the move course. That's what we talk about in the move course, is getting that club shallowed out. The other thing that we talk about in the move course is getting this face squared up early, because that's another reason why people will stand up, right? So if I have this face open as I'm coming down, so I'm cupping this wrist as I'm coming down, that face is getting very open. Well, from that position, I will tend to stand up to release the club earlier, which will help me get that club face square. So one thing we want to understand is that releasing the club early is a way to close the club face. It's a way to get the club face from open to square, right? So, and that's what a lot of people do to square up the face. So if I get a lot of shaft-lean, that actually opens up the face, and I need to do other things to square it up. So if you're coming down and this face is open as you're coming down, that lead wrist is cupped, you're coming down, that face is open like this. Well, a lot of times you will early release the club. And if you early release the club, you typically have to stand up out of it, early extend. Otherwise, if I stay in my posture, even if I'm shallowing out the club and the face is open, if I stay in my posture, I'm going to throw the club straight into the ground, right? So I have to stand up to make room for the club, and that allows me to square up the face. And again, I'd much rather you do that than leave the face way open and hit it a mile to the right. So you're at least able to hit a functional shot when you do that. Not ideal, not optimal, but at least you can hit an optimal shot when you do that, or functional shot when you do that. So what I'd be looking at is the stop release extension course and or the move course to help improve what you're talking about. Try to find the root cause of it. I know what I went over was a lot, and it can be very, very difficult to do this on your own. So I do offer online lessons. And if you're interested, let me actually, because I opened up some spots, but I had some things move around. I think someone accidentally signed up. And I had another person who signed up and then decided they didn't want to do it. So let me see if I have any spots available at the moment. Yeah, so I actually have one spot available right now. So if you wanted me to do an online lesson with you and see what's going on, I'll be happy to take a look at your swing. You just got to sign up for my online lesson. So if you're interested in that, click the get a review link at the top of the page there. And that will take you to the swing review page where you can kind of see what it's all about. And then you can go to the bottom and sign up. And I can, if I saw your swing, I could tell you, hey, this is why you're doing X, right? We need to fix this to get you working a little bit better. So if you're interested, yeah, check it out. All right, so let's keep going. So Ed Z says, hi Q, my question is about the amount of side bend on the takeaway and through swing. Thought it would be different for a wedge versus a driver, but now not sure. Yes, it's absolutely different because the club, the length of the club is different, right? So this is a wedge right here. Here's a driver, right? So the driver is basically an entire grip length longer. So because of that, I'm going to be standing a little bit more upright with my driver than I am with my wedge, right? So here would be like my wedge right here, right? And then this would be kind of like a driver. See, I'm a little bit more upright. So because of that, that's going to make my side bend a little bit less with a longer club because of that. So a good way to get a feel for this, there's actually a really good way to get a feel for this. Let's see here. So what you can do, this is an old golf towel. So what you can do is you can place a towel on the ground. All right, and the towel would be roughly about 2 feet wide. That's what this towel is here. And if you address the ball, you place this ball about 2 feet, about a towel width away from it. And now I'm going to set up to the ball. All right, I'm going to stay in my posture, in my golf posture, my setup posture. I'm going to put this club across my shoulders. And when you put it across your shoulders, it's really important to put it high up on your shoulders, like where your shoulders are, right? Because if you put it down here, you can kind of move it around and it's not really going to be equal to what your shoulders are doing. So put it on top of your shoulders. The club should actually be kind of choking you a little bit. Right? It should be up against your neck. All right. So I'm going to put that club, again, I'm going to set up to the ball. I'm going to stay in my posture. I'm going to put this club up against my neck. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn in the backswing. And as I'm turning, I'm going to be tilting my shoulders down gradually. And I'm going to be visualizing as if there's a laser shooting out of the end of this club. And that laser is going to be tracing the upper edge of this towel. Right? So that's what I want to be imagining. And that's going to give you kind of that gradual side bend as you get up to the top of the swing. All right. So again, I'm in my setup position here, staying in my posture, club across the shoulders, and I'm going to turn and I'm going to point that down at the upper end of the shoulder. So that's where I should be at the top of the swing. Right. So I have some side bend, I have some tilt. Right. And then in the downswing, the reason why we use a towel is that the downswing tilt is actually less than the backswing tilt. It's steeper than the backswing tilt, right? So I want my backswing tilt to be tracing down the lower edge of this, right? So my side bend is going to be steeper as I'm coming through, all right? So again, address, stay in my posture, club on my shoulders, I'm going to turn back, and then in the downswing, my hips are going to push back, and I'm going to be steeper as I'm coming through, and then I'm going to come through into the full finish. All right, so I'm imagining that there is a laser pointing out of the end of this that's tracing the lower edge of that towel. All right, so that would be kind of a good way to get the feeling of, and then that if I use a driver, right, because it's longer, I'm further away from the golf ball, so I'm going to be a little bit flatter, right? So that's a good way to kind of give you a sense for what your side bend and tilt should be with a wedge versus a driver, or 7-iron versus a driver. You can get a sense for all of it. All right, so let's keep the questions coming here. I'm guessing we had some more posted in there, but it's making me put in my password, so. All right. All right, I was wrong. We don't have any new questions in there. So if you got some more questions, go ahead and post them in there, and we'll be happy to answer them. Yeah, all the questions in there were from yesterday's office hours. So post your questions in there, and we'll be happy to answer them. So I did see one. Neil W said they purchased the divot board, and he's finding that he hits the ground before the golf ball. Which piece of the TSG system would I recommend? So for direct help on that, what I'd recommend is working through our stop chunking and topping course. That's going to directly fix the problem. That's what I would actually recommend doing, because typically if you're hitting the ground before the golf ball, it's typically because either you're not loading up properly, or you're not loading up on your lead side. Like the timing of your loading is off. So if you want to check out that stop chunking and topping section, that's typically what's going on. So what I mean about the timing of your loading is when we get pressure or force into the trail foot, a lot of times people aren't doing that until the last part of the backswing. And if you're doing it in the last part of the backswing, you have to start your downswing with your upper body and stay on your back foot and throw the arms. And that's going to typically make you hit the ground behind the golf ball. So what we want to do is I would try to shift pressure or get force going into the ground with your trail foot before the club even starts going back, right? And then I can start pushing into the ground. And then about halfway back, that's when I want to start pushing to my lead side. So that's the sensation of your back being to the target as you are getting in your weight shift. That's the sensation you need to get used to in order to make ball first contact. Because I find that most people who chunk the ball aren't doing that. They don't have their back to the target as they're shifting their weight to their lead side. So, and then the other thing is that people get confused because we're telling you, hey, you need to be shifting your weight in the backswing. You're not shifting all of your weight in the backswing. It's starting in the backswing and it's continuing in the downswing and into impact. So I think a lot of people, are who are doing it are trying to get all of their weight to their lead side, and before they even start the downswing, and that's where it's getting really difficult. So it's not all it's shifting. So basically, if you imagine the force that I'm putting into the ground, right? If I'm 50-50 in my feet address, right away to start the backswing, I'm more on my trail side. And then about halfway back, I'm peaking in my trail side, right? So about in this area, I've maxed out the amount of force I'm putting into the ground with my trail side. And then as I'm getting up to the top, as my back is turning to the target, right, my force is slowly, gradually moving to my lead side, right? So I'm now at the top, I'm basically recentered. I'm about 50-50 again at the top, but it's moving in that direction. And then when I continue with my downswing, right, it's continuing to increase in my lead foot, right? So that's what we really want to get happening. So the stop chunking and topping course has got some good step drills in there to really kind of help you feel the forces in the ground and to help you to understand how to shift your weight. For those of you who aren't familiar, the divot board, that's this guy right here. This is an awesome tool. This is probably my number one training aid of all time at this moment. Who knows, in the future, there may be better ones. But I think this is really, really good. And if you're not familiar with it, what this does is you put a ball on it, and it's actually like sequence. I don't know if you've seen those like sequence pillows where, you push everything in one direction. It's kind of like a satisfying kind of pillow where you push all the sequence in one direction, it shows one thing, push it in the other direction, it shows another thing. You may have seen like sequence dresses or clothing or things like that. But what this does is if I come down and I hit this, it's going to show me where I'm hitting the turf in relationship to the ground, in relationship to the golf ball. So if I put that golf ball on that yellow dot, you can see I have my divot start right in the middle of, that's pretty good for one-handed, right in the middle of that yellow dot, and I got a nice divot there, right? If you're chunking the ball, that's likely starting back here, and it's going to tell you that. So if you're hitting off of mats a lot, those mats a lot of time they're making you feel maybe a little bit better than what they should, because when you hit off of a normal mat, the club hits the mat. It can hit the mat 5 inches behind the golf ball, and it can slide on the mat, and it can make you feel like you just hit a fantastic golf shot. It can make you feel great. But the reality is that if you were hitting off of real turf, you would have chunked it, right? So then you're feeling great about yourself. Then you go to the course and you chunk a bunch of shots, right? So I'm all about going to the range and feeling good about yourself, but you don't want to have that false sense of feeling good about yourself. So if you have a divot board, you can make those corrections, right? You can bring that divot board to the range with you. If it's a mat range, place it down and you can hit shots off of it. And then you can get the sense, okay, well, I'm actually chunking it. What do I need to do? I have a problem here. So I'd highly recommend it. We actually have an affiliate link for it where I think you can get a little bit of a discount on one. I'll put the link in the chat box. All right, so I'm going to put the link in the chat box here. So if you're interested and you want to check out the divot board, you can see the link in the chat box there. But then we'll keep going, and we'll keep answering some more questions here. So answered that one. So Ed Z says, thanks, Q. Good explanation. That really helps. No problems, Ed. Glad to help. All right. So Steve A says, what are the key factors controlling ground contact? So as I mentioned, weight shift is one of them. So, getting a good compression line, because if you're not shifting your weight and you're hanging back, your compression line is going to be hanging back quite a bit. So that would be a key factor. Whether your club path also plays a key factor. So if I get the divot board out again here, if I'm swinging extremely in to out, right? If I'm swinging way in out, so imagine I'm set up here, got my golf ball right here, and I'm swinging way to the inside. Well, my club's going to tend to bottom out way before the golf ball. And then on the other end of the spectrum, if I swing way over the top, my club's going to tend to bottom out toward the golf ball or toward the target, right? So that'd be one thing I would look at. Am I swinging way too much from the inside? The first thing I would look at is your weight shift, right? Am I getting to my lead side at impact, right? And with that, is my compression line more straight up and down or just slightly angled away? When I say slightly angled away, I'm talking a degree or two, because that's a lot of times going to that's going to very closely dictate where you're hitting the ground is your compression line, because that's showing you where your lead shoulder is, right? So if my lead shoulder is, if I'm like this coming into impact, my lead shoulder is way back here, I'm going to tend to bottom out back here, right? Whereas if my lead shoulder is more here, right, then my club's going to tend to bottom out more toward my lead foot, right? And keep in mind that where the club is bottoming out, that's not where the club's hitting the ground. Your club is bottoming out in the middle of your divot, right? So that's somewhere in the middle of your divot. So we typically want to have that club grounding out well or bottoming out well in front of the golf ball. So just to give you an idea, a tour player, the low point of their swing, which is where the club's bottoming out, right, where it's reaching its low point in the arc. For a tour player, the average tour player, that is going to be 4.5 inches on the target side of the golf ball, right? So if my ball's here, we're talking that club is going to bottom out about right there, right? So what that means is my club's making a descending blow into the golf ball, and then it's hitting the ground. The club's hitting the ground, and then it's in the ground, and about 4.5 inches in front of the ball is where it's bottoming out, and then it comes up out of the ground after that, right? So that's with a 7-iron. Now, if you go down through the bag toward the wedges, that's going to be more like 6 inches in front of the golf ball. And the reason for that is that because it's a shorter club, the arc is tighter, it's smaller, and also the ball position is typically a little bit more back in the stance with a wedge. And then if you go up through the bag, you go to the upper irons like hybrids, fairway woods. That low point is going to move a little bit closer to the golf ball. It's going to be more like 2.5 inches, but it is still in front of the golf ball. Mind you, it's still in front of the golf ball. It's not happening at the golf ball. It's still in front of the golf ball. But it's a little bit closer to the golf ball, more 2.5 inches. And the reason for that is longer club, wider arc, so it's going to come in shallower. And then also typically the ball placement is a little bit more forward for typically those upper clubs, right? So that's why you're going to see those differences. So your compression line, which is dictated a lot by your weight shift. Are you shifting your weight properly, right? And then your club path, swinging too much into out, really changes the ground contact. And then lastly, the release of the club can really change the ground contact as well. So if you're early releasing the club, a lot of times you are going to struggle with chunks and thins and things like that. So let me show you why that would be. Just to kind of go over an extreme example here. If I was coming down into contact, let's say I stopped right here, and then I just released the club. Well, what happens? My club's going to hit the ground way behind the golf ball. Well, if let's say I came in right here, and then I released the club really, really late, right? Well, now my club's hitting the ground way in front of the golf ball. So all things equal, the release really makes a difference in where you're hitting the ground in relationship to the golf ball. But those first two things that I mentioned, the weight shift, the compression line with the weight shift, and then the path of the club, those are the two things you need to get correct. If those two things are correct and you still struggle with chunk shots, then the release would be the last thing that I would look at. The reason why I say that is that the release is the most difficult thing to change in the golf swing. And some people may argue with me on that, but I've done thousands of lessons, and a lot of these lessons are to get the club to release more out in front. And it is the one thing that people struggle with the most. And myself, I was very much an early releaser of the club, and I still have to work on it to make sure that I don't go back to it. Right, I still have to drill it sometimes to make sure I'm still getting some good shaft lean. And every now and then, I actually just shot a video not too long ago, and I looked at my video and I was like, doggone it, I'm releasing it a little bit early. Right, so I drilled on it a little bit that night to get that right feeling back, to get that ball flight down a bit. Now I don't play as much as I used to, so it's not. I'm lucky to play once a week if I get a chance. So it's not, I'm not seeing it all the time. But yeah, it's definitely a very difficult thing to change. So, but the weight shift and the path of the club, those are much, much easier things to change. So take that low hanging fruit. Don't go for I know the release is probably a more sexy thing to change. But if it's, if you see those two other things off, those two things are much, much easier to change. And honestly, if you're not going to be able to change those other two things, there's no way you're going to be able to change the release, because it's much more difficult to change. All right, so Joe R says, what is the correct order to work through the top speed course if you are not working on any specific problem? So in the order in which it's presented is really, so there's two ways you can work through the system. So the system is in the order of stable fluid spine, power turn, lag, compression line, and release, right? And as I just mentioned earlier, the release is the toughest thing to change. And that's a big reason why it's the last piece. And also, all of those pieces pretty much are prerequisites to even be able to release the club properly. So there's two pieces to work. There's two ways to work through those. Within every piece of the top speed golf system, there are 3 levels, right? So what you can do is you can go to the stable fluid spine course and you can work through level 1, and then you can work through level 2, then you can work through level 3, and then you can go to the power turn and keep on going through in that fashion. Or what you can do is you can go to the stable fluid spine, work through level 1, and then go to the power turn, work through level 1, lag level 1, and work through all the level 1s of each course, and then come back to the stable fluid spine after you've done the level 1 release and work through level 2 in each one. So it's completely up to you. I've seen many people work through the program in those 2 different ways. The key is doing it, right? It's not so much the order in which you do it. You do want to do it in the order of the levels, right? In the order in which it's laid out, but it's more about actually putting the work in and doing it. So the other thing to consider here is that you may not need to do every single piece of the system, right? So if you look at level 1 stable fluid spine is all about getting in that proper setup, right? So if you look at your setup right now and you are naturally getting into a good setup position, you can skip that, right? And you can go to level 2 of the stable fluid spine, or you can go to level 1 of the power turn. So, and you may look at your swing and you may say, hey, my power turn looks good. I don't need to work on that. So now I would make sure that you watch the videos and you look at your swing on video and you know for sure, because again, all of the it's a prerequisite for every single one, but that's the thing to keep in mind. Because when I get video, again, I've done thousands of lessons. And when I look at online lessons and when I look at student swings, they tell me what their handicap is. And I'll tell you, I can look at all the swings and I can typically guess the handicap range that they're going to be in based on the amount of the system that they're getting. Now, obviously, there are definitely outliers, but typically, a middle handicap player is going to be doing 2 to 3 pieces of the system correct, typically. So if I look at their swing and they're doing 2 to 3 pieces of the top speed golf system pretty well, I would guess that they're somewhere between a 10 and a 20 handicap. And I would say probably that is correct, 90% of the time. Now, there's definitely some outliers, but I would say now when you get single digits, a lot of times they're doing 3, 4 pieces of the system correct, right? Now, there are outliers. I've had players that are 25 handicaps, and they're pretty much doing the whole system correct. It's just that their skill level is not very high. So that dictates the kind of coaching that they're going to get. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. But I know it's kind of a long answer to have a short question. But So I give you a little bit more there. So Ed Z says, can you discuss ball position when chipping from the 4 different slanted lies, uphill, downhill, side hill, both ways? So side hill lies, the ball position is not going to change. It's going to be normal, right? It's not going to go more back in your stance, right? You're really, what you're trying to do there is you're getting your body level with the slope, right? So if this is how my body position is for a short chip, if that ball's way above my feet, then I'm going to be more upright, right? If it's way below my feet, then I'm going to be more down like that, right? And then ball position for a chip that's more downhill, you're going to want to put that a little bit more back in your stance, just like a ball back in the stance. And then for an uphill, you don't really need to put it, you don't really need to change it very much. You can keep the ball position the same. The only one you really change the ball position very much is for the downhill one, because typically your club's going to ground out sooner for that because it's more downhill. So keep your arrange your shoulders with the slope, so that way you can swing down with the slope. But your ball position, you may want to put the ball position slightly more back. Now keep in mind, if you put it more back in your stance, it is going to come out lower. So you may not, depending on the lie, you may not want to put it back in your stance. But if it's kind of a lie where it's sitting down, I would maybe think about putting the ball a little bit back, like a ball back in the stance, so that way you can ensure that you're getting some good contact with the ball. But understand that it is going to come out lower, so use some loft and understand that it's probably going to run out. You're not going to be able to hit like a spinner off of a downhill lie, because it's going to come in low. If you're not getting perfectly clean contact, it's not going to have a lot of spin on it. But the angle of descent that's coming in, it's typically not going to have a ton of spin on it. So keep that in mind. But if you're hitting off of a uphill lie, the reason why you wouldn't want to necessarily put it up in the stance is, unless you're wanting to hit it higher, right? If you want to hit it high, then sure, put it a little bit more up, put it a ball forward in your stance. But generally, if you it's going to go high enough if you're hitting off of uphill, depending on how. But usually, you don't really need to change the ball position very much. It's about focusing on making ball first contact. All right, so Mike S says, Q at the top of the takeaway, can there be any play in the grip to get an angle for the lag, or should the grip be uncompromised? Let me read that again. At the top of the takeaway, can there be any play in the grip to get an angle of lag, or should the grip be uncompromised? So I think we're maybe getting lost in terms a little bit. So for me, the takeaway is basically from the start of the swing to first parallel, right? So what I would say is, generally you don't want to create any lag in your takeaway at all. Your takeaway, you want it to be mostly shoulder turn, right? That's mostly what you want it to be, is mostly shoulder turn. There's going to be a little bit of hip turn in there, but it's going to be mostly shoulder turn, bringing the club back. So if you look at it from here, that's what the takeaway should mostly look like, right? So it's mostly my shoulders, a little bit of hips. If you look at it from this angle, right? So I have a little bit of hip turn, but a lot more shoulder turn. But I'm not hinging the club up very much at all. It might be a very slight amount, but it's not very much. The reason for that is, if we hinge the club up a lot, we'll tend to swing shorter, and then we'll tend to want to release that lag earlier. So to be able to get some good lag, we actually want to kind of go a little bit wider, so that way we can get more of a change of direction to create lag in the downswing. I may be misinterpreting your question, so you might want to ask it in a little bit of a different way, and we'll see if we can get on the same page. So Mike W says, hi Q, just wondering about practice putting in my home. I have a putting carpet in the basement, but because of the slope of the cement floor, I'm not able to set up a straight putts. Everything has breaks. Any ways to establish if I'm aligning, sending ball online when all the putts have big breaks to them. Well, what you can do is maybe set yourself up a level surface, you know, to do that on. That would be my best recommendation, is to set yourself up a level surface, so that way you can find a perfectly straight putt. But I mean, if you know that the putt is breaking, right, then you can also, aim that way, and you can still kind of practice your putting that way. Because to be honest, you're not going to run into that many dead straight putts. So most of your putts are going to be breaking. So it's not necessarily bad practice. And if you miss the putt left, right, and you have good speed, then you something's off, right? So it's not really going to be that big of a deal if you know how much it breaks, right, with the amount of speed that you give it. Right. So that's what I'd be looking at. The other thing I would say is you can use something like this. So this is a piece of aluminum. It's like a quarter. I think it's like 1/8 inch thick. Definitely not quarter inch thick. 1/8 inch thick, 1.5 inches wide, 48 inches long. I got this at Home Depot. And what you can do is you can place this on the ground, right? And you can roll putts on this and roll it with some speed, right? So that way you can know, because if you roll it with some speed on this, it's not going to break very much on it, even if you have a little bit of curvature in your carpet. And if it is, you can kind of shim it or whatever, get it to where it's nice and level. And then you can practice on something like this to get it on the right start line. I wouldn't say it's that big of a deal if you have some breaking putts, for sure. Because if you know that they break, then if it's kind of consistent, then you can have an idea if you're putting it on the right line or not. So Mike S says, critiques say the divot board is not durable. What's your experience with its durability? It definitely doesn't last forever, but you can buy new things for it. So it has. Now, if you had to just keep buying and spend $130 on it every single time, I think that's how much it is. Every single time this got all dinged up, then yeah, I would say that kind of sucks. But if you have this this base here, so this rubber base, and then they give you you can buy, I think they're like $30, the replacement, the little things that you can buy to replace it, and then it's basically a brand new thing. So in my experience, they last a good while. I mean, I've hit a few hundred shots on this one, and that's what it looks like right now, right? So if you hit, I would say you could hit on it. I don't know exactly how many you could hit on it, but yeah, I mean it's there's other ones that are like this. So another one is this is I'm trying to remember. I think this is a AccuStrike. That's what this is. So this is a similar training aid, but again, I feel like over time this wouldn't last as long, and you would have to buy a completely new one, right? Whereas, and also the build quality on this, I don't think is as good. So that's why I don't really I've definitely hit more shots on that one than this one, but like the paint's starting to come off. I just feel like if this broke down, I'd have to buy a new one. Whereas if that breaks down, I just have to buy a new insert for it, right? It's not an entirely new thing that I have to buy. And the feedback is much, much more obvious, right? It's showing you exactly where it's starting and ending. Now, I think it would be perfect if it lasted forever, right? If there was a way to make something like that you would never have to buy anything new for it, that would be even better. But yeah, I mean, the insert's not going to last forever, but it's definitely. I definitely think it's fine. It's not going to look perfect. I mean, it's going to get to a point where it's like, okay, do I need to buy a new insert? I haven't gotten to that point with this one. I haven't practiced with it every day. I mainly use it for demonstrations and things like that. So I've probably taken a few hundred swings on it. But we have one at the office that we've taken a lot of swings with, and it maybe looks a little bit more roughed up than that one. I've had some students that I know have taken a lot of rips on theirs, and it looks like it's taking a beating, but again, it's still usable. It's just that at what point do you decide, okay, I need to get a new insert, right? That's kind of what it comes down to. But I think I think for what it is, it's pretty durable. But everyone's obviously that's a little bit subjective, right? Everyone can have a little different opinion on that. So Bruce says, I average 73 miles per hour with a Mitsubishi GB39 Graph A shaft. Can't get any higher than 74, 75 with a heavier 55 gram EG load and allow faster club head speed. Bruce, what I would recommend is getting professionally fitted. Unfortunately, there's no way for me to know if what shaft is going to be fastest for you. So the only way to really know what club's going to work, I wish I could tell you, hey, Bruce, this is the club that you need. Fortunately, I just don't know. If I did, I would just be lying to you. And anybody that would tell you, hey, you try this shaft, you're going to be a lot faster, they're lying to you too, because they don't really know. So I would recommend getting professionally fitted. I would go somewhere that has lots of options and will have you bring in your old club. And that way you can kind of test and see what's faster, compare and contrast, right? Because any good club fitter, if you come in with your normal club, you're going to hit whatever, a dozen shots or so, right? You might even have you hit more shots than that. I'm not sure. And then in their brain, they're already going to have an idea based on the numbers that you're producing, because they should be using some sort of system like TrackMan or FlightScope or GC Quad or something like that to have an idea of what your parameters are. And then in their brain, they're already thinking, okay, this shaft might be good. This shaft might be good. And then they're going to give you stuff like, hey, I want you to try this one. They're going to, move around weights. They're going to get things, because what it comes down to, it's finding the right head weight. It's finding the right CG, the center of gravity of that club head. It's finding the right loft, right, for you. It's finding the right shaft, which would mean the right length of shaft, the right weight of shaft, the swing weight of the entire club makes a difference. The stiffness of the shaft, the kick point of the shaft. There's lots of things that go into it. So to know, there's just so many parameters that there's no way for me to know what's going to be maxed out for you. Generally speaking, you're probably not going to swing a 55 gram shaft faster at the speed that you're swinging at. But it's certainly possible that you could, because 39 grams may be too light. You may not feel like you can really swing that. So it's hard for me to say. There's just no way for me to know. So I would recommend going and professionally fitted. I wish I could help you, but a place that I would recommend would be like Club Champion. That's what it's called. Sorry, the name escaped me for a second. Club Champion. They have tons and tons of options, and you don't have to buy the club from them. You can just pay for the fitting and then buy a used club and save some money. Obviously, they will sell a club to you, but and you may want to. They may put you in a club and be like, hey, this is the club I want. And I don't know if you can walk out the door with it or not. They may have to build it for you, but definitely, I've gotten fitted a couple times there and always had a good experience. So check it out. They're located in major cities all over the country. Google search Club Champion. All right, so let's keep going. See if we can answer the rest of these questions before we run out of time here. So Steve A says, I've transitioned to a 5-wood instead of a 3-wood so I can hit a longer, higher, or a bit higher and have a better chance of holding the green on par 5s. Can you discuss ways to hit fairway woods higher? The main reason that I see people struggle with hitting fairway woods higher is, one, where they strike it on the face, and two, the amount of speed in which they hit the ball. So what we have to understand is woods and fairway woods, hybrids, they have domed faces, which means higher on the face has more loft, lower on the face has lower loft. And I find that a lot of people hit their fairway woods thin, and that's what will make the ball go lower, right? So I really focus on try to hit it higher on the face. It may go against what you may think, but you may have the ball too far forward in your stance, and that can be making you hit the ball lower on the face, which is going to make you hit the ball lower, right? So if you play the ball more a little bit forward to the middle of your stance, that will typically help you to get higher on the face and help the strike go higher. The other thing would be club head speed, right? So you may not have the club head speed to support hitting a 3-wood or being able to hold a 3-wood on the green. I know. I mean, I actually have a decent amount of. I'm above the tour average of club head speed, and I have a hard time. I could if I try to hit it a certain type of way, but if I'm hitting my normal 3-wood shot, it's not gonna have much hold to it. Typically goes pretty low. So if you're trying to hit 5-woods to hold the green, typically, or a 3-wood to try to hold the green, typically a 3-wood is going to not hold. It's typically going to, unless you have a lie where you can kind of hit it really high and like hit up on it and get a lot of spin, maybe, then maybe you could hold it. But typically 3-woods aren't going to hold. But that being said, if you want to hit the ball higher, more club head speed will make you hit the ball higher. So all things equal, if I hit a ball at the same launch angle with more speed, it's going to continue to climb in the air. It's going to continue to go higher, and that's going to come down. So where you strike out in the club face and more club head speed will help you hit the ball higher. To get more club head speed, I'd recommend our 20-minute distance fix course. I know we really just use the driver in there, but there's going to be a trickle down effect to all your other clubs. You're going to get longer with your club head speed is just not going to go up with your driver. It goes up with all of your clubs. All right. So Ed Z says, sorry to keep sending in questions, but I find your explanations to be very helpful. No problem, Ed. That's what I'm here for. Feel free to skip my question if it prohibits someone else from getting theirs answered. I have difficulty judging chip shot distance to elevated green when I can't see my landing spot like I would a normal chip. How do you suggest handling these shots? I try to use your imagination as much as you can. And what I would try to do is almost think of a distance that you're trying to hit it. And then when you're practicing, try to practice hitting those distances, right? So you could think, okay, this is a 15. You could set up like alignment sticks at 5 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards, right? 20 yards. You can set those up kind of like on a chipping green. And then you can think, okay, I want to hit this one 10 yards, right? And then you can kind of hit it and then see how far that goes. See how far it carries, right? See if that lands where you want it. And kind of practice getting a feel for that. So that way, when you have a blind shot and you're thinking, you can use your imagination and think, well, I know I'm about 15 paces from the top of the hill, right? And I want to land it 4 paces beyond. I'm hitting it uphill. So depending on how severely it's uphill, you kind of have to calculate that. Okay, I want to carry this, I want this to be a 25-yard carry chip. So then you can kind of get the feel for how to hit that and then hit it up. It's going to take some practice. I mean, obviously, when you have the ground way above or way below, there's some judgment that goes in with that, and that's a skill that you have to develop, right? So that's why I'd be trying to develop the skill of being able to judge your distance on those kinds of shots, and that's going to happen through on the practice screen. Even though the practice screen may not have those elevation changes, but you can still practice your distance, and then you can kind of accommodate that for you can obviously you're going to need to, if it's uphill, you're going to need to add more carry, right? And if it's downhill, you're going to need to take some away. But again, the severity of the hill is going to dictate your judgment on how much you need to add and how much you need to take away, respectively. So Mike S says, at the top of my backswing, I feel the grip loosening for my fall through to get my lag angle. Is this acceptable? No, the grip should not be loosening in your hands. It's probably due to an improper grip. So what you want to make sure of is that when you're gripping the club, you don't want to have spaces between your thumb and your hands, right? So if I hold the club like this and I have a space there, that club's going to move around. If I hold it like this, the club's going to move around. So you want to have those thumbs close together. Like if I was going to hand you something, right, it would be like that, right? That's how I want to hold the club, the same kind of way. So that way I have some grip security. And then you want to make sure that you're not holding it too much in the lifeline of your hand, in the lifeline of your hand, or too much in the fingers. It needs to be kind of a mixture of both. So going across the below the base of the pointer and above the base of the pinky. That's basically where you want it. And a good way to kind of get a feel for it is to create a hook with your finger, and then you want to have your heel pad, which is this kind of fatty part of your hand on the edge of your hand here. You want that to be on top of the club. All right. So if I create a hook and I have my fatty part, I can support the club just like that. Now I can wrap my fingers on there. I have my thumb close to my hand, and now I have a nice secure grip. So when I go up to the top, I'm not losing my grip. The other thing may be that you may be swinging from the top and your transition may be really, really quick. That could be the other thing that's going on. So try to slow down your transition a little bit. Try to feel the change of direction of the club and try to feel like that angle is not really sharpening until you start the downswing, right? And if that is the case, then, if you go up to the top and then you try to go like that, then it's going to be hard to keep your grip on the club, especially if you don't have a very good grip on it. All right, so we got another one from Vitus. Vitus, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Visar says, "What's the key to hitting a good 3-wood?" So we touched on this a little bit earlier, but the main thing is the strike on the club face. That's really the main thing. So making ball first contact and hitting that ball in the center of the face. I find that a lot of people that struggle to hit their fairway woods, they hit them very thin, right? And if you hit thin, it's just not gonna. It's gonna be spinny. And it's going to be low, and it's just not going to be very, very good typically. I would make sure that your ball position is not too far forward. A lot of people play the ball way too far forward, and that leads to that issue. And then I would also try to have the sensation that you're trying to hit down on it a little bit. I feel like a lot of people with the 3-woods, because there's not a lot of loft on it, they're trying to help the ball up in the air. And when they do, they tend to release it early, and that does add loft, but the problem is it makes the strike low on the face, and also it doesn't allow you to really hit down on it very much. So it may feel like you're kind of going in the opposite direction, but I'd move the ball. You probably need to move the ball back in your stance more, a little bit forward of the middle. I would say generally, two balls forward of the middle. So if this is the middle of my stance, right? If that's the middle of my stance, having it 1-2 balls in front of that is typically a good place for a 3-wood, right? I see all too often people have it like where the driver is, and I know it's a wood, but a driver is on a tee, right? It's elevated. The ground isn't in the way, right? You are allowed to hit up on it, but with a fairway wood, you got to hit down on it some. So you want to put the ball in a position that will allow you to do that. So make sure your ball position is good, and I would try to have the sensation that you're actually taking just a little bit of a divot as you're coming through. Obviously you can hit a great shot kind of sweeping your 3-wood if you have a really good lie where the ball's sitting up, but generally you almost want to take it just a little bit of a divot, just a tiny bit, like not like a big like dollar bill or even longer kind of divot, but it's just like a little. You should be roughing up the ground a little bit on those fairway wood shots. That's going to help you to get the strike higher on the face. And then I would see where your strikes are on the face. If your strikes aren't in the middle of the face, it's not going to be a good shot, right? So see where the strikes are. If you're hitting it way on the toe, way in the heel, right, then I would adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. A good way to check for that is to use foot power spray it on the club face, and then hit some 3-woods and see, okay, am I hitting it in the middle of the face? If you're feeling a lot of twisting, like if you hit your 3-wood and you feel the club kind of twisting in your hands, you're not hitting it in the center of the face. It should feel like a marshmallow when you hit it, right? So that's an indication that you're hitting it in the middle of the face if it feels, if it feels like a marshmallow. So adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. If you find that you're hitting the ball on the toe a lot, then try to hit the ball on the heel and vice versa, right? So that's what I'd be looking at. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you all next time.